Hello, reporter room investigators. Come on in, come on in. We have a lot of great information to share with you today on the Bryan Kohberger case. Whew, oh my gosh. We are going to be talking about the Dana Smithers case. I got a lot of questions about that. Why were Mary Ann and Michael Kohberger testifying? So we'll address your questions. We're going to talk about Ted Bundy and Bryan Kohberger's connections to Ted Bundy and BTK. We're also going to talk about how Bryan Kohberger used technology both before and after his crimes. You will recall that he applied for a job with the Pullman Police Department. And what he wanted to do was teach the Pullman Police Department how to use technology to solve crimes. And we're also going to talk about the defense motion to delay. And we're not going to just talk about that because we already know that, but we're going to talk about how this relates to victims' rights in Idaho. So come on in, tell me where you are from. If you are watching, come on up and talk to me. I'd love to have a chance to interact with you. My name is Jessica Della Davies. I'm an investigative journalist, and my job is to investigate crimes, crime scenes, and potential suspects, and share with you how to do the same thing. If you have not subscribed to Reporter Room, it's free, and I can't get to 50,000 subscribers without your help. Like, share, leave a comment, and know that everything I'm sharing is my opinion. So Bryan Kohberger is innocent until proven guilty. However, I'm not a judge. You're not a judge. This is not a jury, and we're not in a courtroom. So we are going to be talking about this case in terms of him. So come on in and tell me where you are from. And you guys know I like to get started right away.
And they don't have to lay out their whole case here. They just have to make up probable cause.
They went through a very lengthy analysis of the cell phone. What people have to understand is the cell phone is not like GPS.
That the scientist and the science behind this, when they do match his DNA with the DNA that was found at the crime scene, I think that will be an extremely important 51%.
This is Reporter Room with Jessica Della Davies.
Okay, so let's just put up a picture of Bryan Kohberger so anybody coming by knows who and what we are talking about today. And let me move myself over here. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about the Dana Smithers case. Why were Michael and Mary Ann testifying to the grand jury? I got some questions from you guys, which is why I'm talking about it today. But we're going to talk about Bryan Kohberger's connections to Ted Bundy, Bryan Kohberger's connections to BTK, whose real name is Dennis Rader. And we're also going to talk about how Bryan Kohberger used technology both before and after the crimes. And remember, he applied for a job. He wanted to work with law enforcement to teach them how to use technology to solve crimes. And we're going to talk about the defense motion to delay, not just talk about it, but in terms of what rights the victims have in Idaho. So we're going to look at that together. So please come on in, tell me where you are from, and let's get started. So let's start with the technology. So let's talk about how Bryan Kohberger was using technology both before the crimes and after the crimes. So Bryan Kohberger, first of all, we know about the Reddit survey that he posted, wanting to know about motivations and behaviors of criminals. Now, I didn't see anything really unusual about this post when I first learned about it, but he was a criminology major, so it wouldn't have been shocking for him to post a crime survey. But according to Dateline NBC, he followed up with one of the criminals and wanted to know more details and wanted to hear details about the crime repeatedly, to the point where the criminal who he was following up with thought it was odd. So it does seem like BK may have been living vicariously through this Reddit survey. There's also been reports that some of his follow-up that was done on the Reddit survey was done after classes had finished for the year. So Let's talk also about the TapaTalk. Now, we talked about the fact that he had an account on TapaTalk. New York Times did verify that it was Bryan Kohberger, and he was posting on TapaTalk as a teenager. Now, what strikes a lot of people as odd is that he describes knowing his father as a good man, but not feeling anything for him. He also describes viewing himself as a sack of meat. And even more concerning, he describes viewing other people as sacks of meat. So I think he was trying to attribute his symptoms and just trying to figure out why he didn't feel things that normal people would feel. And I'm wondering if this was him experiencing some level of depersonalization or some level of psychopathy. If you tell me, let's do a poll. If you guys think that Bryan Kohberger describing other people as sacks of meat was a level like him trying to figure out if he did have sociopathic or psychopathic tendencies, put a 1 in the chat. If you feel like that Bryan Kohberger just wanted to know, it was describing other people as sacks of meat, doesn't mean anything, put a 2 in the chat. I just want to kind of see where we're at on this. So on Instagram, because we're going to go through all the technology, and then we're going to talk about Bryan Kohberger's connections to BTK and Ted Bundy. On Instagram, we know that Bryan Kohberger was following Maddie and Kaylee on Instagram, and I've shown you guys the proof of that, both on mainstream media sourcing, but also the shadow dragging sourcing. So we also know that he was doing, so that's another online. We also know that he was doing online shopping. Let's consider what some of the purchases were, what we know and what we don't know. Now we know Bryan Kohberger purchased a knife, a K-bar knife, in the March of 2022 from Amazon. He also purchased a knife sheath and a knife sharpener. Now this was approximately 8 months before the crimes at 1122 King Road home, and just a couple of months before Dana Smithers disappeared. So I'm not saying he had anything to do with Dana Smithers, but I do want to address it because it's been asked of me repeatedly in the comment section. So I think that Bryan Kohberger would have been fantasizing about committing a crime like this for a long time. I think he practiced with that knife. We know that there were animal hairs found in his Pullman, Washington apartment, and he didn't have an animal. So do these hairs link back to Murphy, to the dog? Do they link back to the Colbert's dog, Buddy the dog, who was done away with on October the 21st, which is the very same day that Bryan Kohberger received an email from his professors telling him that he was failing to meet their expectations. So was he enraged? And we know that people that commit crimes like this often start with animals. Now, BTK also searched for the Amazon K-bar knife after the crimes were committed on November 13th of 2022. So the jurors are going to want to know, where was your knife? Where's your knife sheath? And even more incriminating, in my opinion, is the fact that after he did search out this K-bar knife, after the crimes, he then tried to delete his Amazon search account activity. Now, in my opinion, he was trying to cover up for the fact that so speculation warning here, he was searching for a K-bar knife. He didn't want people to know he was doing that after the crimes were committed. So we also know from that he purchased a balaclava mask. Now let's talk about what he was into. And then we're going to talk about his connections to BTK and Ted Bundy. And we're also going to talk about Dana Smithers. Why were his parents testifying at the grand jury hearing? And we're going to talk about the delay tactic on Ann Taylor's part, but we want to talk about it in terms of the victims. What rights do they have in the state of Idaho? So we're going to go through all of that together. So please stay with me. We have I have a lot of stuff planned, and I do spend a couple of days getting ready for every live stream that I share with you. Now let's talk about what he liked, what he was into, what he was doing searches for that we did find out. He was really into corn with a P, and he enjoyed watching videos or images, looking at people who were being essayed and who were medicated or passed out. So he enjoyed non-consensual essay. That's what he was into. So we're talking about the technology. Let's talk about the photos on his phone, what we know and what we still don't know. We also learned about the social media and his personal details, that he liked to take selfies of himself. The thumbs up selfie was taken just a few hours after Kaylee, Maddie, Ethan, and Xana were done away with. And in my opinion, the selfie is kind of creepy, just in light of what had just happened and knowing that he was back at the house with his phone pinging just after 9 a.m. on November 13th. Was he back there to looky-loo? Was he back there to see if he could find his knife sheath? Or did he leave the knife sheath behind on purpose? K-Bar, KB, K-Bar, BK, Bryan Kohberger. Bryan Kohberger, was he planning to be the K-Bar killer? Was that his fantasy? Was that his plan? Did he leave it behind as a calling card, or was it dropped accidentally? Let me see what you guys thought about the poll that we just did. Let me check in with chat. We're going to have a very interactive live stream, so come on up and talk to me. It's great to see you guys. Let me back up chat a little bit. I am behind. I'm so sorry. Kathleen's here. Hi, Anna. When is the next court date? We have a court date coming up mid-May. However, the last public hearing is done. We're not, this court date is not going to be available to the public. Now, Ann Taylor does have to give her evidence for an alternative perpetrator by this Friday. So I expect to have more breaking news on Friday. I will be going live on Friday as well. Mark says the saddest thing about this is when it's all said and done, there are 4 beautiful young people who will still be. Yes, that's true. Nothing will change that. You're right. It's very, very heartbreaking. Yeah. So we have one. There is one in mid-May, but it's not going to be available. I'm sorry, in June. It's already. I'm sorry. In June. Let me correct myself. There's going to be a court hearing in June, but we are not going to be able to watch it. If the judge changes his mind and decides to let it be open, then that's great. I will for sure be streaming it. And Jazz, thank you so much for modding today. Hey, leave no trace. All right, so let's see where we are. Thank you to all of our mods, channel members, and subscribers. Ryan says he's praying that the judge doesn't allow for another continuance. Hi, Christine. Come on in and let's go through I'm looking for 1s and 2s. I see Brother Mike is our other head mod is in here, and Leslie's modding today. Thank you. And I saw Sirius Black in here too. Wicked's modding. Christy, thank you so much for modding today. Hi, Mental Gymnastics. Okay, so let me see. I'm looking for 1s and 2s. Oh, all right. So we have 1. Romantic 1. Brother Mike says 1. Donna says 1. Susan says 1. Pip Lover says 1. Kathleen 1. Toss Penny thinks a 2. Betsy 1. 1. Christy 1. Mental Gymnastics 1. Wicked says 1. Leave no trace 1. 1. Kami says 1. Okay, so I've seen 1, 2. A lot of 1s. Thank you to all the mods who are welcoming our people who are joining us in the top chat. I really appreciate your help welcoming everybody and keeping the chat safe for everyone. Vintage believes that he's definitely disturbed. Me, myself says 1. Leslie 1. Thank you for modding today, Sirius and Kami. Skylar 1. Sherry 1. Hi, Dan. Florence says 1. Tori says a 101. Thank you to Sirius Black for gifting 5 Reporter Room memberships. Wow, that is so nice of you. If you received a Reporter Room membership, please be sure to thank Sirius Black for that. That's really nice. 5 memberships. Wow. And thank you to Susie Burke, and welcome to Susie Burke for becoming a Reporter Room channel member. We're so glad to have you with us today. Okay, so I think, the 1s have it. I think the 1s have it. So let's continue on because we have so much stuff to get into. So all right. And Lenora got a channel membership. If you come up in the top chat, you might get a channel membership. That's really common. We have a lot of very generous people that do that for you guys. So I think that's so nice. All right, so let's talk about the photos that were on Bryan Kohberger's phone. We learned about his social media and personal details. He loved to take selfies of himself. The thumbs up selfie, as I've shared with you, I think it's creepy. We saw the hooded selfie, which was, people believe that was a nod to Ted Bundy. Let me know if you have a different feeling in the comment section. So come on in, tell me where you're from. We also know that he had numerous photos of female students from the University of Idaho, including students that were connected to the victims. So for people who have said there's no connections between Bryan Kohberger and the victims, he was following Kaylee and Maddie on Instagram, and he had photos of their friends. And I have not been able to verify this, but it's been widely reported that he has, and there's still a lot of evidence we don't know about, but it's been widely reported that he has photos of the actual victims on his phone. I don't know if this is true or not true, but this has been reported out by mainstream media sources. So we're going to talk about Bryan Kohberger's connections to BTK, Dennis Rader, and Ted Bundy in just a moment. So we know that his connections also to the victims include the DNA that was found on the knife sheath that was found underneath and to the side of Precious Maddie, who just would have been 24. This would have been her birthday on Sunday. So now, or Monday, it includes having photos of their friends on the cell phone. So I've seen in the comments a couple of times people telling me there's only one cell phone tower for the entire city of Moscow, Idaho. This is not correct. There are 4 cell phone towers in Moscow, and Bryan Kohberger's phone was pinging within 100 meters of the 1122 King Road home, mostly after hours, right? Between 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. and 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. So what was he doing in and around the King Road house during those times? I also want to talk about, we're going through Bryan Kohberger's technology, how he used it. So we're going to talk about the GPS device he had on Strava. We know that he installed Strava on his cell phone, that he was able to run a 6-minute mile. So he was certainly in good athletic shape. This app is really interesting because it is a GPS app, but doesn't go in your car. It actually is on your phone. It measures where you're walking, how fast you're walking, your heart rate. So it's, in my opinion, more helpful than GPS. And so will the prosecution be able to line up Bryan Kohberger's Strava app with his cell phone pings? And now we know that there weren't just 11 pings leading up to the crimes, but there were 23 pings leading up to the crimes. So we also, this is some speculation here, but this part we know is true. Kaylee's Bluetooth was never returned. We know that her father, Steve Gonzalez, has stated multiple times that he would love to have had Kaylee's Apple Watch and Kaylee's laptop to give to his other daughter who just went away to college. But Kaylee's Bluetooth was not returned to her. So why? Why does law enforcement have Kaylee's Bluetooth? Well, I believe that this is so speculation alert here. I believe that Bryan Kohberger was using a technique called blue snarfing. Basically, it's a hacking technique, and that he may have been accessing Kaylee's Bluetooth to spy on her. We know that this wasn't returned to Steve and Christy Gonzalez, and the only reason I think law enforcement would be holding her watch, her Apple Watch, and her laptop is because Kaylee did have Bluetooth. We know Bryan Kohberger was at the house 23 times leading up to the crimes. Many people have theorized that he was sitting in that parking lot behind the 1122 King Road home, and that this would have given him a goldfish bowl into Maddie's room. But get this, he could have also been sitting up there accessing Kaylee's Bluetooth, and because you have to be within proximity to that, and looking at their photos and looking through personal information in regard to Kaylee. We know that Kaylee told her family that she was worried that somebody was stalking her. She did feel worried. Now, we can't legally use the term stalking in relation to Bryan Kohberger because the definition in Idaho for stalking is very narrow. The victim has to feel threatened or harassed. And in this case, I don't think any of these victims would have even been able to tell you the name of that Bryan Kohberger's name if you show them a picture of him. But so did Kaylee help solve her own crime, just like Paul Murdaugh did with Snapchat? where you could hear Alex Murdaugh clearly in the background of the video at the dog kennels. Did Kaylee help solve her own crime? So I don't think he was just sitting in that back parking lot to watch Maddie through the windows. I think he was doing more than that. And the reason I think that he's capable of doing that is because of what he did to his friend and colleague. And some people have said, well, she liked him. Just because you like someone doesn't mean that they're entitled to use your own security cameras to spy on you inside your home during your most intimate moments. It doesn't mean she deserved this. I'm absolutely appalled that there are one or two people who seem to think that somehow she deserved this. Luckily, this is the minority, but he reportedly shared an office with her, and she trusted him. She liked him. He would have known where she kept her keys. She kept her keys in her office drawer. He reportedly broke into her house and moved around stuff, put a cake in the microwave, took papers and a watch. And then she freaked out. She went home and stuff had been moved around. There was a couple things missing. And I believe he was tending and befriending her during this time. And that he, offered to come over and help install her security cameras, or maybe she asked him. But he didn't just install her security cameras and go home like a good person, decent person, a good man would have done. He used her security cameras to spy on her. He got access to her Wi-Fi password and used her own security cameras to spy on her inside her own home during her most intimate moments. And I think this is significant in relation to, was he doing something similar using Kaylee's Bluetooth to access her information to get, intimate personal emails, or, and I don't mean intimate like in a, essay way, but just personal, intimate emails. And, I think this would have given Bryan Kohberger a huge sense of power over the WSU colleague that he did this to, and also to the victims at the 1122 King Road house. Let me know if you have a different take on this, or if you agree. So let's talk about Bryan Kohberger's connections to Dennis Rader and whose name is BTK. And then we're going to talk about his connections with Ted Bundy. And then we're going to talk about the defense motion to delay. What rights do the victims have? Because they do have rights. And then we're going to talk about all of this in just a moment. So please stay with me. But let's start with the BTK connection. Let me pull this up for you. Take this down. All right. And we're going to talk about Ted Bundy too. But I want to start with this. This came out today. The source on this is Radar Online. And a lot of people of us already knew that he had a professor at DeSales. He was taught by famed professor. This is her, Dr. Kathleen Ramsland. Now, she specializes in the psychology of SKs, and she has authored dozens of books on the subject and has routinely been featured on true crime programs. Now, as her student, BK reportedly read several of her books, including Inside the Mind of SKs, Why They Do This, I'm watching my words, and Confessions of an SK, the untold story of Dennis Rader, the BTK killer. So he, would have read her books. I'm sure she would have felt flattered. Now, Howard Blum, who is a journalist, he hypothesized, but ultimately had to walk this back a little bit. And I'll tell you why. That his hypothesis, and I'm glad that Radar Online is framing it this way, because initially it was reported out that he was claiming that this was the motive. And I don't think this was the motive, but this is his hypothesis. So it's worth, considering this, because Bryan Kohberger did study under this particular professor. But his hypothesis is that Dr. Ramsland became the idealized object of BK's respect and affection, which in an uneven landscape of his mind tipped into a toxic obsession. Now, he suggested that the alleged motive was born out of a desire to prove that the pupil was ready to become the teacher, and he was determined to demonstrate to the professor that he had learned all her lessons well. He said, while her academic journey into hell had been judicious, reaching out in letters and interviews to convicted schmurderers, in this scenario, he would charge full speed into the belly of the beast. Theoretically, he would be able to do away with someone and get away with it. He would prove how smart he was and show her how much he had learned. So while Dr. Ramsland did not reply to Howard Blum's request for comment, the author did note that the professor previously stated that she was not in communication with BK before his time at Washington State University or after his arrest, even though she did reach out to his family following his arrest as a, quote, gesture of kindness. So in my opinion, I think she reached out to his family. She's trying to ingratiate herself to the family. I think she'd probably like to write another book from, like she did with the BTK book. But the author additionally highlighted this theory was not suggesting that Dr. Ramsland encouraged any delusions that BK may have fostered. So despite Dr. Ramsland insisting that she did not have any contact with Bryan Kohberger, and this just got published today, after meeting him was her student, a source claimed that the suspect's family informed a court-appointed attorney that they would not meet with him until they reviewed a potential conference with Dr. Ramsland. So I don't know if this is true or not true. I'm skeptical. I'm just going to tell you that, I think she would have done this. I don't know if she would risk her job as a professor and risk her impartiality as an author to do this. But I do think she did reach out to the family. She has admitted that. And I think the motive behind that, in my opinion, is because she'd probably like to write another book. And the only way she's going to have access to the family is if, they're willing to talk to her. So Dr. Ramsland was also working on a new book, which is believed to include a chapter about having BK as a student. So here we go. She's believed to be working on a book about Bryan Kohberger and what it was like having him as a student. He added, of course, it's impossible to step inside the mind of an alleged murderer, but perhaps some more substantive insights will appear in her pages. He said, quote, I think anyone searching for the criminal justice student's potential motive might mull an insight into SKs that the learned professor herself once shared. So that is his connection with BTK. And I don't think that his motive, in my opinion, let me know if you have a different one. Let's do a poll. Okay, so if you think that the professor, that Bryan Kohberger's motive was to impress this particular professor, Dr. Ramsland, put an A in the chat. If you think that his motive was an incel, involuntarily celibate, with misogynistic hatred toward women, put a B in the chat. And let's see where we are with this. So put an A if you think that he's connected to that. Let's see where we're at. And put a B if you think it's incel motivated. And I'm just curious where you guys are at on this. I told you guys what I think. I think it's related to being an incel. That's why he was at the lecture. That's why he was at the lecture that he attended. He was at that lecture for the Handmaid's Tale author, right? Why was he there? All right, Pip says B. Susan says B. Vintage Peacock B. Brother Mike B. Thanks for modding today, you guys. Tara says B. Dawn says, I'm so glad I found this channel. I love Jessica's presentation and how she explains everything. Well, thank you, Dawn. You totally made my day. Thank you so much. That means a lot. It means a lot. Toss Penny B. Firm B. DLM B. So come on up and talk to me. Tell me what you guys think. B. 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 Haiku thinks it's both. So we're putting an A if we think that his motive was to, and he is innocent until proven guilty, but I'm not a judge. And you're not a judge, and we're not in a courtroom. So we are going to talk about this case in terms of him. If you think it was both, so Haiku thinks it was both. Kami thinks B. Leave no trace B. Penny B. So we got a lot of B's. So that's really interesting. Patricia thinks it's a B. So does Christine. So does Afro or Troll. And Jazz thinks it's a B. Ozzy says B. Christian says B. Anna says B. B for Chris, Ann. B from Christy and Leslie. Thank you both for modding. Jackie says A and B. She thinks it could be both. That's, I should have probably given that as an option. B, but you guys are sorting it out. B and B. Donna is B. Kathleen is B. Marie is B. Lenore says B. Jackson thinks it's A and B. B. Shady Sadie thinks it's A. So she thinks he was trying to impress the professor. B. And Samantha thinks A and B, really both. Very, very interesting. Vintage Peacock said he totally hated women from all credible media outlets. Yeah, we heard about his problems that he had at the Severn Sirens. This is when he was attending DeSales University in Pennsylvania, that they had a card on file for this guy, a card on file where they had notes in there because he'd get a couple drinks in him and he'd start harassing female servers and female guests. Imagine if you're a server doing your job working and this guy gets a drink or two in him and he just starts harassing you. And that's just, and we know he was removed, not suspended for 2 or 3 days, not put in detention for a couple of days in a row, but literally removed from his high school program for problems with interacting with females. And he was ultimately removed as a WSU teaching assistant because of his interactions with females at WSU. He was standing with his, blocking the door, forcing them to have to go around him. So that was a power move, in my opinion. He was following them out to their cars. I can't imagine being a young woman and having, a 6-foot tall teaching assistant who has the power over my grades following me out to my car. I think that would just be really, really shocking and difficult to deal with. And then what he did to his WSU colleague. Some people are like, well, she liked him. Okay, so if you like someone, does that give them the right to get your Wi-Fi password and then spy on you using your own security cameras? Does that give them the right to do that to you, to surveil you? It's creepy just because you thought they were nice and you liked them. I don't think it does. If you have a different opinion, let me know. Let me know why you think that would give him the right just because she liked him. Anna says B. Girl Friday says, I think he was angry and wanted to see if he could outsmart everyone. Yeah. Carrie put a B. James put a C. Okay. Betsy said B, and Maddie ignored his Instagram messages, according to Andrew Garrett, digital forensics guy. Exactly. So Maddie, he was following them. I showed you guys the shadow dragon proof, and also from Garrett Discovery, and that he was following Maddie and Kaylee both on Instagram. I also showed you proof that he had a second cell phone that was related to WSU with its own separate phone number. With that too. I'm not going to rehash that today though. All right, so let's keep going. And I will come back and check in with chat, but let's talk about we're going to talk about Ted Bundy and his connections to Ted Bundy in just a second. And we're going to talk about the delay, but we're going to talk about in terms of the victims. What rights do victims have? So I think this is delay, that, that's a common defense tactic. And I think the judge is going to deny this delay unless it's determined that the prosecution leaked this information to Dateline. If that is not proven, I think the judge is going to deny this. And I'll tell you why. And this is just my opinion, and opinions are not facts. But the judge wrote, in addition to the defense complaints of being unable to meaningfully, he wrote that the defense complaints of being able to, this is prior to this is something he wrote in the past, when he denied another delay motion by Ann Taylor and the defense team. But he said that being unable to meaningfully review the discovery rings hollow. He said that the defendant has been receiving discovery in the same manner for over 2 years. Remember all the claims Ann Taylor stood up in court and she made out like the prosecution wasn't turning over everything? Well, it turns out that that was not true. They were turning over everything as soon as they had a chance to go through it. Now, the prosecution is ready. Granted, they're a couple of weeks ahead of Ann Taylor because they arrested Bryan Kohberger on December 30th, and she did not get the case till a little bit after that. But they're not months or years ahead of her. So if the prosecution was able to meaningfully go through everything, then why isn't Ann Taylor ready? We've heard so many things, and it's like, well, if you can't do that, at least take capital punishment off the table. So I think this rings hollow, but let's listen to what the judge has ruled in the past and just see if this helps us determine what he's going to rule this time. And I think we're going to find out by Friday. So he tells us that the defendant has been receiving discovery in the same manner for over 2 years. So she's been receiving this for 2 years. In that time, this is the judge, she's talking about Bryan Kohberger here, has not once sought remedy from this court to regulate discovery, such as requiring the state to provide discovery in a different format. He has not sought additional resources under ICR 12.2 to hire additional staff to help organize and sort the evidence. His lead counsel insisted she be allowed to take on a second high-profile capital punishment case, despite the voluminous discoveries in this case. Further, an oral argument, lead counsel indicated that her practice is to personally review all of the discovery herself, rather than rely on associates and staff to review the materials to cut through the less relevant information and point out what materials need review by lead counsel. These actions are not indicative of an overburdened defense team. In fact, it's evident that the defendant has been able to capably navigate the discovery given his more robust motion practice. Yeah, think about this. She wrote a 40-page motion for a delay because she doesn't have time, but she has time to write a 40-page motion. He also wrote the scope and breadth of the experts retained and the disclosures filed. So in my opinion, Ann Taylor's motion to delay is nothing new from Ann Taylor, other than the Dateline NBC and the fact that Vicky Ward and James Patterson are planning to release a book in July. Who cares? Who cares? There's going to be more books and more specials on this case if it's delayed, not less. And who's to say that you cannot rule out if a juror saw the Dateline NBC episode by simply including a question about this during voir dire? So I think the judge is more focused on the victims and their loved ones than the judge in Latah County. I think John Judge was a good judge, but I think this judge is more victim focused. And we just had the final pretrial conference. And if the defense needed more time, that would have been the time to file for a continuance, but they did not. They did not file for a continuance. So I don't think the judge is going to grant this. Moreover, and I think this is so just disingenuous, Ann Taylor waived Bryan Kohberger's right to a speedy trial. And then she delayed. And the Latah County judge kept granting her delay motions. And she's the one that picked summer of 2025, not the prosecution. Go back and watch the hearings. I have them on my playlist. She's the one that wanted the summer of 25 and told John Judge she could be ready. But now, because of the Dateline NBC episode, unless you take capital punishment off the table, I can't be ready. But get this. She filed the motion to try to suppress Dylan's testimony because she believed that Dylan's testimony over the past 2.5 years would have faded and that Dylan wouldn't remember accurately what she saw. She created the delays and then tried to use the delays that she created. I'm talking about Ann Taylor and the defense team here, to prevent Dylan from taking the stand. So is this a win at all costs for Ann Taylor? Because why would you take on another high-profile capital punishment case if you had too much to do on this one? And also, the other thing I thought was really interesting is she doesn't really explain in her motion why she's not able to get her work done. So I don't know. I think that it's 40 pages of I need a delay, or you need to remove capital punishment. That's what I think. Let's talk about the Dana Smithers in just a second. And we're also going to talk about Bryan Kohberger's connections to Ted Bundy in just a moment. But I just want to talk about the victims for a second. So let's go to that article. And okay, so my sourcing on this is Justia U.S. Law. And the Idaho Constitution, Article 1, Declaration of Rights, Section 2.2, Rights of Crime Victims. So this is, in my opinion, the rights that the families have. And I think these rights need to be considered. Also, they have been lost in this process, in my opinion. They have the right to be treated with fairness, respect, dignity, and privacy throughout the criminal justice process. But 2, and this is the one I really want to highlight, they have a right to a timely disposition of the case. So they have a legal right to have this case proceed in a timely manner. So with this delay, I think the judge has to consider the victims' loved ones and their rights also, not just Bryan Kohberger's rights. Let me know if you feel differently about it, and if so, why. All right, let's talk about Dana Smithers. I've got a lot of questions about that, and then we're going to dive into Ted Bundy. All right, let me pull this up. Okay, so I got questions about that this week, which is why I'm addressing it. I do read your comments. If I don't respond to your comments, it could be because you've used a word that is going to be filtered out. There's certain words, if you're using really graphic language to describe things, your comment may be filtered out by the algorithm. I may not appear. I may not get a chance to read it. So various news media reports have connected BK to the disappearance and doing away with Dana Smithers, who was a 45-year-old woman whose remains were discovered in a wooded area of Monroe County, Pennsylvania, last month, following her being missing since May of 2022. So this is the same county that BK lived with his parents' Albrightsville, Pennsylvania home. Now, I just want to make it clear, the Shroud Area Regional Police Department is aware that many are currently reported news articles in various media outlets have reported connections between Dana Smithers' missing personal investigation and the Idaho case suspect. And they are saying that there is, quote, no evidence that Dana Smithers' disappearance is in any way tied to suspect Bryan Kohberger. And this is their press release on Facebook. It says the Stroud Area Regional Police Department is aware of the many currently reported news articles in which various media outlets have reported connections between the Shroud Area Regional Police Department, Dana Smithers' missing person case, and the Idaho suspect Bryan Kohberger. And again, there's no evidence that ties him to that. But, and so, I believe them. But it is interesting that BK's father was reportedly scheduled to testify before a Monroe County grand jury. Now, this was back in May of 2023, so almost 2 years ago. And I think that's where this story came about. And according to this, CNN, Bryan Kohberger's mother, Marianne, also testified to the grand jury. Now, I don't know why they had to testify before the grand jury. Maybe they just had to rule Bryan Kohberger out, or maybe they knew her and it's just a coincidence. But both parents were reportedly attempted to squash the subpoenas through their attorney, but their efforts were rejected. So they tried to not go. They didn't want to testify. Due to Pennsylvania law allowing judges to release witness testimony transcripts to other law enforcement agencies, the two individuals' testimonies could potentially be forwarded to law enforcement in Idaho as part of their investigation. But it never was, that I know, that I have ever been able to find out. So I just wanted to put that out there. I got some questions about it. And I just have not been able, I don't think there's anything linking Bryan Kohberger to what happened to Dana Smithers, other than the fact that his parents testified. I'm not saying that's not nothing, but the law enforcement is telling us there's not a connection. And I think that we should just take them at their word until we know more. All right, so I just wanted to address that. I got a couple questions about that. Let's talk about Bryan Kohberger and his connections to Ted Bundy. Let me pull this up. Okay, so let's see. Ted Bundy's attorney, defense attorney, has some advice. He has some advice for Ann Taylor. Is she taking it? I think she is. Let me show you why I believe she's taking it. I don't know if she needed the advice. I'm not saying she did, but I thought this was interesting. So Ted Bundy's attorney analyzed Bryan Kohberger's strategic crime sources, and my source on this is U.S. Crime Alerts. So, and this is per Fox News. I just couldn't share the Fox News article because I exceeded my free access to articles. I would have to give them my email, but they have the verbatim what Fox News said. So I was like, well, we'll do this. But according to Fox News, John Henry Brown, Ted Bundy's former defense attorney, has pointed out striking parallels between his infamous client's case and the charges against Bryan Kohberger. He highlighted, so this is an attorney, this is Ted Bundy's former defense attorney. Defense attorney Brown highlighted the geographical aspect of both cases as particularly significant. In Bundy's case, he escaped from Colorado, where capital punishment was soon to be ruled unconstitutional, only to commit more unalivings in Florida. Similar, BK drove from Washington State, where there is no DP, there is no capital punishment in Washington State. He crossed state lines into Idaho, where there is capital punishment, to allegedly do away with Ethan, Kaylee, Maddie, and Xana. They also don't recognize in Idaho mental health defenses, but they do in Washington. Also, people have brought up the why State Park and the fact that Ted Bundy, connects to Bryan Kohberger through that park. But let's continue on with this attorney. So he emphasized the importance of an aggressive defense strategy. He handled hundreds of cases throughout his career. He suggests that the defense team should maintain an offensive position rather than taking a conciliatory approach. So conciliatory just means, a friendly, trying to appease type of approach. I think Ann Taylor has been very offensive, almost to the point of being offensive to the judge, in my opinion. The fact that she's, making warning shots about him being overturned in her latest motion, and the fact that she was trying to, in his words, he had to remind her she was an officer of the court because he felt like she was trafficking in a conspiracy theory related to Cy Ray. I think Ann Taylor is a win at all costs type of attorney, and it's a career-making case, and she wants to win. But he also revealed that he was consulted about Bryan Kohberger's case, but he chose not to participate. That's interesting. And Ann Taylor also told us that some of the witnesses that she has don't want to testify on the stand. Could they testify some other way? And the judge said, no, they can't. They have to. That's what a subpoena is for. She then tried to see if they could testify from a different room. So they didn't want to get up in front of the families and the jury and testify, which I think is interesting. But the judge said, no, they have to testify in person. The only two, and they're going to be on the stand. The only two people we're not going to get to see testify are Dylan and Bethany. We're going to hear them. They're going to be on the stand so the jury can assess them, but we won't get to see them because the judge has determined that Dylan and Bethany are also victims in this crime. The defense team's recent attempts to challenge search warrants through a Franks hearing, though rarely successful, demonstrate their aggressive approach. However, the judge, a recent rejection of their motion due to improper citations, suggests a potential challenges in their strategy. So has Ann Taylor gone too far? Is she starting to alienate this judge with this latest motion? Parallel elements between the historical cases also have emerged. So let's talk about this. Both cases share disturbing similarities in the way they were carried out. In Ted Bundy's attack on Florida State Chi Omega sorority house, he is accused of targeting college students in the early hours through a back door while victims were asleep. Now, people are saying that Bryan Kohberger couldn't have acted alone. Ted Bundy did it in less time than Bryan Kohberger. And he wasn't using a knife. He was using a piece of wood, a log. Brown also shared this observation. He said, here's this guy, some guy, who drives 10 miles from a state where there's no capital punishment, from a state where there's an act, to a state where there's, and from a state where there's no active mental health defense, to a state where there is no mental health defense and capital punishment is very active. He said, I think it's just fascinating. I don't know what to imply from it, but I know the facts are the facts. He also talks about the fact that both Ted Bundy and Bryan Kohberger are, have academic backgrounds. Ted Bundy was a former law student, while Bryan Kohberger studied criminology and SKs, and both of them studied psychology for their bachelor's degree. And he talked about how Bryan Kohberger had studied under Dr. Kathleen Ramsland, who wrote extensively about Ted Bundy. So she not only wrote about BTK, she wrote about Ted Bundy. This is according to Fox News. Now, strategic options and legal considerations. This is the defense attorney for Ted Bundy speaking. He suggests that waiving the right to a jury trial might be a viable strategy for BK's defense team, despite inherent risks. The high-profile nature of the case could make it difficult to find unbiased jurors, even with a venue change to Boise, Idaho. The prosecution's theory about the motive, while not required for charges, remains a crucial element that could influence jurors. Now, Brown notes that in the Bundy case, the motive became clearer as more victims were discovered. BK's defense team continues to challenge the capital punishment, even though their recent motions were rejected by this judge, and the trial is scheduled to begin this summer. So I think that why does this matter? I think it matters because it sheds light on the strategic intricacies of high-profile murder cases, offering a glimpse into the complex thought of defense attorneys. But secondly, there are some really eerie connections between Ted Bundy and BTK and Bryan Kohberger's case, and it does, remind us at how dark human nature can really be, and that there are real monsters that look perfectly nice lurking behind degrees in psychology, which Ted Bundy and Bryan Kohberger both had. So I think a lot of people have also wondered if there's, connections between Bryan Kohberger and Ted Bundy, because let me see if I have a picture of, because Bryan Kohberger, because the Wawa State Park is also linked back to Ted Bundy. And Ted Bundy went to school, not at Washington State University, but in the state of Washington. Did Bryan Kohberger have a lot of options? Did he choose this university because of its links to Ted Bundy? What do you guys think? Let me check in with chat, see where we're at. Before we get too far into this, I do want to say thank you to our producers, Enjaz, Sasha Angel, George Brown, Pepper, and Christy Valentine. And thank you to our channel members so much for supporting Reporter Room. If you would like to become a channel member and have your name appear just like this in all of my live streams and in all of my videos, just click the join button. It's next to the subscribe button. It's just a few dollars, and it does help me out a lot. But subscribing helps also. And I can't get to 50,000 subscribers without your support and without your help. So please consider subscribing. So let's talk about Ted Bundy and the Wawa State Park. And we'll go through some more parallels. I also want to do super thanks and coffee gratitude to Brother Mike, Kami, Donna Bravo, Sandra Forrest, Shannon Nelson, and oh, I went too fast. Thank you for your gifted channel memberships, NJazz, Kami, Amelia, Patricia, and Sandra. And thank you, Shannon Nelson, Sandra DeForest, and Lizbeth, Susie Burke, Valerie, Mike Cole. So I hope I got everybody's name on there. All right, let's go dive into the Wawa State Park. I think I have this wrong. Let me hold on 1 second. Let me correct this. Let's try this again. I see what happened. Okay, my bad. All right. Let me share this. Okay, take this down, put this up. Okay. So Bryan Kohberger is claiming that he was in a nearby park in Washington at the time of the crimes. And a lot of you guys have told me that, this park is linked back to Ted Bundy. So according to court documents, cell phone data places Bryan Kohberger near the Wawa Y Park in the early hours of November 13th of 2022, nearly 40 minutes from the 1122 King Road home. Documents claim, this is Ann Taylor claiming this, BK's defense attorney, that he was an avid hiker and runner that would often like to go on drives during the nighttime. Data from BK's phone include photographs taken himself of the countryside late at dark at night in the early morning hours on different occasions. Now, his defense team intends to offer testimony from Cy Ray, who is an expert in cell phone tower information, to show why he was in south of Pullman and west of Moscow. Now, I don't think the judge is going to let Cy Ray traffic in a conspiracy. So I think what Cy Ray is going to be allowed to testify is just maybe where Bryan Kohberger was headed at the time that he turned off his cell phone. But this certainly doesn't mean that he didn't meander back around. We know that the Hyundai Elantra, some people have said that the Hyundai Elantra that was circling the 1122 King Road home is green. And Regina, one of our channel members, pointed out that Hyundai Elantra doesn't come in the color green. So I just wanted to put that out there. You guys deserve to have credibly sourced information. So I do think that, it is really interesting. So let's talk about some of the parallels in the case between Ted Bundy. Now, Ted Bundy was also found guilty of doing away with university students after breaking into their sorority house. This was not a sorority house. This was an off-campus party house. But according to Welder, one of the important differences between the two cases is their demeanor. And let's listen to what she has to say on this.
And its similarities to other high-profile cases like...
Really quick, can you guys hear that? I just want to make sure you guys can hear this. I don't want to play something and then find out you guys can hear it. Just a quick yes or no. Can you guys hear this volume on this? I'm going to play it and then I'm just going to back it up. Just want to make sure you guys can hear it.
The 1978 Chi Omega murders. Does this add up to...
So can you guys hear that? Yes? Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much. Okay, you guys are awesome. Thank you so much. All right, lots of yeses. You guys are the best. Thank you so much. All right, and I do also want to thank NJazz for gifting a reporter room membership. Thank you so much, NJazz. I really appreciate your kindness and your support. And if you receive that gifted membership from NJazz, please make sure you tell her thank you. It's so nice. And thank you to Manic Siren for the $2 super sticker. I'll be putting that toward editing equipment. Thank you so much. And NJazz gifted another reporter membership. Oh my gosh. So far, between Sirius Black and NJazz, we have 7 reporter room memberships that were gifted out. And we are going to be doing a live stream on Friday together as a true crime community, because we're expecting the judge to, Ann Taylor, that's her deadline for the perpetrator. She has to provide evidence by this Friday if she's planning to introduce an alternative perpetrator, proving that they are connected to this crime. And so her deadline is Friday. So we're expecting some motions from the judge. So we'll be doing a members only live stream after our everybody live stream. We'll be doing that first at 6 o'clock, and then our members only will be after. Betsy says, I guess he was full of adrenaline and couldn't just sit there. Very risky to drive in and out of that house on a dead end street. He's got no common sense. Yeah, some people can be book smart and not street smart, right? All right, so let's listen. Let's listen in. Let me back it up.
Much for joining us again.
Thank you for having me, Kelsey.
So, Tracy, as a former FBI agent and a CIA officer, what insights can you provide on the Bryan Kohberger case and its similarities to other high-profile cases like the 1978 Chi Omega murders? Does this add up to you?
You know, yes and no. I can understand some of the similarities. In fact, I have no doubt in my mind that Bryan Kohberger, I mean, look, we know he was a criminal justice student. He was pursuing his PhD in criminology. There's no doubt in anyone's mind that he most likely studied the Bundy case. In fact, I teach it to my own college students because I teach criminal justice. So I have no doubt that he was absolutely familiar with the Bundy case. And yes, certainly he went into a home where there were members of two different sororities really in there. However, I see a few differences, and the difference that I actually see is their demeanor. Bryan Kohberger, if we look at sort of the reporting that's been done about him, he was not someone that I would say is charming. He's not someone, by all accounts, he was standoffish, and he didn't get along with a lot of people. Ted Bundy actually used his charm to commit a lot of his crimes. Another thing that we can look at in terms of similarities of the types of crimes, we know Bundy bludgeoned a lot of his victims to death, and we have Kohberger who stabbed them. So that's an intimate crime. So there's similarities and differences between the two.
Well, this week, we also know that the Kohberger defense requested a full record of grand jury proceedings and evidence for the case.
Okay, so let's talk about some more of the similarities. Let me move myself over here. All right. So I think it is very interesting to go through this. He also searched out Ted Bundy. This is according to what we learned from the Dateline NBC. So he was looking, well, we already talked about that. I want to go through that again, but I want to talk about his searches on Ted Bundy. And we saw video of the car. I've seen some people try to say, and it, you know, that the car was green. Again, Regina has pointed out, and she is right, that Hyundai Elantra does not come in a green color. So the car that everybody's saying is not his car, it's a green car, it's not a green car. And I believe there's 12 hours of raw video footage that we have not seen yet, you guys. So, you know, ultimately will be up to the jury to decide. If you think that the car that was seen, that was circling the 1122 King Road home is a white Hyundai Elantra, put a W in the chat. If you think the car that was seen circling the 1122 King Road home on November 13th of 2022 is a green Hyundai Elantra, put a G in the chat. So W if you think the car is white, and G, green. G if you think the car is green. So she's right. Ted Bundy was very, very charming. And I think this is how he got away with this for such a long time. He was able to do away with a lot more people. And I think a lot of it was because he did, you know, he was charming, and people couldn't believe that he could commit a crime like this either. In fact, he got married when he was on trial for doing away with these two sorority students, and he was ultimately convicted. But while he was on trial for this, a woman married him. So that just shows you that there really are some people that no matter what, they're never going to believe that this person could do something like this. And she had his baby. But I do think that the fact that he, you know, has all these connections to Ted Bundy, the fact that he was looking up Ted Bundy, the fact that he took the hoodie photo, you know, it is very, very concerning. It's just another connection to Bundy, in my opinion. So let's see what you guys have to say If you think what color you think the Hyundai Elantra is that's driving around. If you think it is a white Hyundai Elantra, put a W in the chat. If you think it is a green Hyundai Elantra, even though that Hyundai Elantra doesn't come in a green color, put a G in the chat. Betsy says Bundy was very crafty, pretending to have a broken arm. Yeah. So this is what Bundy's MO was. He would, let me move myself over here. He would approach girls in his VW bug. He had one of those beetle bugs that were real popular in the 70s. And he would approach young women with his arm in a sling or his arm in a cast and say he needed help. And these young women would help him, and then he would abduct them. So he was very charming, very well-spoken. And in contrast, Bryan Kohberger is not known to be charming or well-spoken. Maybe well-spoken. I mean, he got the job at WSU, but not charming, not, able to charm women to the women were creeped out when he was following them out to their cars at WSU. They reported him and they were creeped out by it. Christian thinks that Ted Bundy was way more attractive. Okay, so let's see where we are on this. And Jeremy thinks the Chi Omega sorority unaliving was very similar, other than a different type of weapon. Right. In the Chi Omega, he used like a piece of wood or a log. And in this, it was a knife. And I think that, both are very personal and up close. So we got W. So it seems like most of you guys think the Hyundai Elantra was white and not green. If you think it was green, put a G in the chat. Lots of W's. I don't see any G's. Well, that's good. That means that, credible information is getting out to people. I think that's a good thing. Jessica thinks it's white. Okay, good. So people think that the Hyundai Elantra was indeed white. Me, myself, and I says, I believe they have more video showing BK. Oh, they do. They have 12 hours of raw video footage. And the reason we know this is Ann Taylor made a motion to suppress the 12 hours of raw video footage of the Hyundai Elantra, claiming that she didn't have time to go through it. And the judge denied it, of course. White car. People think that the car is clearly not green. Okay. And Jess says 601 watching, only 267 likes. Please, everyone, press that like button. Yeah, hit the like button and then tell me what number like are you? Are you number 300? Are you number 301? Tell me what number like you are. Samantha says white. Okay, so it looks like most everybody agrees that there's a white Hyundai Elantra. Betsy says the distortion, people think it's called a chromatic aberration, and it's common phenomenon of security video and moving objects. It's not green. Thank you. I agree. Haiku says the truck in the video is white and white on the video. Toss Penny said the morning video in daylight when he returned will definitely display the correct color, maybe even a tag number. Yes, and remember, they also got the video of his car at the Costco and also at the Albertsons that morning when he went down to Clarkston too. And they also have the August 21st traffic stop. Sherry thinks it's the white Hyundai Elantra. Wayfarer thinks it's also. Jeremy said, yeah, BK would not be able to approach girls like Bundy did. They would run the other direction. That's what was happening, because he was following these young women out to their cars. Now, I think he was intentionally, this is just my opinion, I think that, and the fact that he, went on a date with somebody, she didn't like him. She went in the bathroom and threw up so he would leave, pretended to throw up so he would leave. And he texted her later. She had nice birthing hips. I don't think he said that to be kind. I think he was intentionally being rude. And I think the fact that he was making these young women at WSU, where he was the teaching assistant and had power over their grades, go around him and following them out to their cars was also an effort to exert power and domination over these young women. And I can't imagine how scary it would have felt as a young female student to know that you could get a bad grade from this guy that could, cost you your place at your university if he decided to grade you badly. So lots of W's. Crafty says, I'm trying to put in AW, and you did. Susan said, oh my gosh, there's a baby Bundy, poor kid. Yeah, there's a little girl. She had a daughter. Okay, Callie says, someone will say they painted it or it's a wrap. Oh, okay. That, Callie, you're probably right. I'm like on the conspiracies, yeah. Donna said, let's hit the thumbs up, everybody, on the way in, on the way out. Greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for modding today, Donna. WW, Brother Mike said, I know Baby Bundy. And just remember, Baby Bundy, she is innocent. She's not guilty for what her dad did. She probably never, I don't even know if she probably even remembers him. Eileen says, some people just want to fuel the conspiracy, sad and ridiculous. Yeah. Outer Bank says the BK's car did not have a sunroof. Okay. Donna says, prayers for the innocent victims, may justice be served. Idaho Bill 37. And Sirius says, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel. Oh, thanks, Sirius. And I thank you so much. I appreciate your support. One way you can support me is to just be here watching the videos, to give this video a thumbs up, supports me, to subscribe. That lets YouTube know that I'm doing a good job. So thank you guys for that. Me, myself, and I thinks BK is an introvert. Jeremy said he would also pretend to be a cop. And he wanted to be one of Ted Bundy, yeah. And Betsy says, with green only appears as mid-tone gray on black and white, all the colors on the grayscale, never white. Red appears as dark gray, for example. Thank you for sharing that. That's really helpful. Tammy said, hello, everyone. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad you are here. Yeah, it was avocado toast. I mean, it's really sad that these young women had to be, afraid. Bella thinks the car is white. All right, Jet Set agrees with you, Donna. Callie said, Bundy first broke into a house and assaulted a female in a house full of young men. It wasn't until he decided he wanted to get them alone that he tried the broken arm scam. He knew women would help. Yeah, he used our good nature against us. Tracy said, BK's mom also had something going on with the BTK serial dude. No, she didn't. Let me just clarify that. No, she didn't. She wrote an op-ed, which is an opinion-based news thing, that she was against capital punishment. She didn't have anything going on with Ted Bundy or BTK or anything like that. She wrote, now it was in response to Ted Bundy, who was done away with. He was convicted and the judge did impose the ultimate sentence. But I don't want to impugn her. Eileen said, thank you so much. I really try. And if I'm speculating, I try to make sure I let you know that. Does this mean I'm perfect? No. Afro thinks it's a W. Afro Troll. Christine, thank you for modding today. Jada says, I've seen the video going around showing the green car. It could heat, car wrap, or paint job. Either way, though, BK drives a white one, and his was seen a ton, not the green one. And that's the link for the channel membership if you are interested. So I hope I've cleared it up about Bryan Kohberger. Kai said BK's Elantra passed by the home 23 times before the incident and never again after that day. It's his white car circling the home that night. Yeah, thank you. I agree. Okay, so I think that's, hopefully we've cleared that up as well. On the green Hyundai Elantra, it did not come in that color. So I think I'm looking to see if there's anything else I want to talk about. I think I'm going to leave it there. We cleared up the Dana Smithers. We showed some comparison and contrast, and also Bryan Kohberger's connections to both Ted Bundy and BTK. If you join me late, you can always back up the chat. And Naomi says, come on, guys, like and subscribe. Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And Sorsha says, remember a couple were attacked. Their husband was done away with a knife in their home before the Idaho crime. The wife said the guy just came in and they were sleeping. I don't know about that. Do you remember where it happened? I can look it up for you. The Wawa Park may have been soaking in Ted Bundy's essence in his head to pump himself up. I think that's where he went. In my opinion, this is just so speculation alert, but in my opinion, that's where he went and dextered out the car. I think he dextered out the car at the Wawa State Park. That's why he was there. And the park closes at dusk. And I think I showed you. Let me see what dusk was. Let me look. Let me pull it up. What time was dusk? Okay, so dusk on November 13th of 2022. Oh, that's London. I forgot to put in where. Let me put in where. Idaho. Let me put in Moscow, Idaho. Let me get more specific. All right, let's try that. All right. Okay, let me move myself over here. So according to this, we have the month selected. Let's go to the day, which is the 13th. You can see there was ice fog. I reported out that there was ice fog, overcast, so there's no way he was out stargazing that night, in my opinion, due to ice fog and being overcast. He wouldn't have been able to. I mean, ice fog isn't, even in the morning, it's still overcast and mostly cloudy. But that night, for sure, when, these crimes were committed, he wasn't out stargazing on an overcast, ice foggy night. So I'm trying to see if we can get the sundown. Let me try something more. Let me just put something that's not specific. Let me just put in so according to this, I didn't put in the specific date because I don't know if I'm going to be able to get the exact date without doing like a more detailed search. Just waiting for this to populate. It's thinking about it. Let me close this. Okay, let me pull this up instead. Okay, so I can choose my town. And I can choose my month and my year. Okay. Make sure I'm not blocking your view. And I am. Let me move myself. Okay. So you can see here on the 13th that sunrise, the sundown, this would have been on the 12th. Sunset on the 12th was at 4:18 p.m. So the idea that he was, and the park at Wawa State Park closes at sunset. So the idea that he was at the park during the times of the crimes, he would have had to have been in the park illegally. And sunrise didn't happen until 6:47 a.m. on the 13th. So anyway, I just wanted to show you guys that as well. All right, guys. Well, I think I'm going to leave it there. If you have not subscribed to Reporter Room, please do. And let me please just give a huge thank you to Shannon for the $5 super sticker. Thank you so much, Shannon. I really appreciate this. She says Dr. Remlin empathizes with SK, so BK felt understood by her. Oh, wow. That's very interesting. I'm going to be doing Jack and Lily next. If you want to follow me over, I'm going to be doing that case right now. So follow me on over, and we're going to cover updates on the disappearance of Jack and Lily Sullivan, who are the two little children, 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, who disappeared from their property in Nova Scotia, Canada. So thank you so much for coming by to spend a little bit of time with me. If you haven't subscribed to Reporter Room, please do. It's free and it helps me out a lot. I can't get to 60,000 subscribers without your help. And let me say a thank you to the mods. If you are modding, please come down and drop me a comment so I can thank you. Thank you to Brother Mike. If you are modding, come down and drop me a comment. Thank you, Christine. Faraday says, thank you. I'm going to send this out to broadcast to social media. Thank you so much. Jet says that I live in Seattle and that time of year it can be pitch black. Thank you for our mods, Susan and head mod Brother Mike and Donna. Thank you to our mods and channel members, but I want to do a thank you to our mods. You can back it up. It's okay. Don't worry, Kat. Kamie's, thank you for modding. Donna is modding. Thank you so much. Chris Ann says, thank you for modding. Thank you, Enjaz. I don't see you down here, but you might be busy. And Janice says, thank you, mods, and a safe good night. There's Enjaz. Thank you so much, Enjaz, for modding today. That's our other head mod. All right, guys. So I am grateful to get to spend this time with you. I love connecting with you on the live streams. And we will be going live again on Friday because I'm expecting updates about the alternative perpetrator and the alibi this week. So be on the lookout for that. And I will see you next time.